auction house that across the bridge where he is apartment. There used to be a bar there called the office. Even better.
Geez, I didn't think you were that old.
I'm not. I've heard stories. I've heard stories. I've heard stories. Yeah.
Call the December meeting of the infrastructure committee to order at 5 p.m. Do a roll call. Council Kelly.
Here.
Council. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh. Jennifer.
I'm here.
I'm here.
Okay.
Sounds like somebody's been to their book. I thought the office told me.
Okay, approval of the minutes of November 7th, infrastructure meeting. Make that motion in a second. Council Talon, all in favor? Aye. Okay, move on to public works. Discussion.
One of the activities quickly here, daily operational. Emergency water line job is shut down for the year. Everything is restored, so we're able to plow roads and deliver pedestrian access. We'll pick it back up probably sometime after April 15th and finish up the job. We have had a series of water main breaks, 4 in a week, Adirondack Lane, there's one on Prospect, a service line on Court Street, and then Friday, we had one on Dover Street. It's obviously not frost related, so we're too early in the season for that. We're hoping it's just bad luck. We are keeping track of what's going on. There's nothing that sticks out. Obviously, there's throughout the city, not localized in one area, but we did have a good number of water breaks. Pavement and patching throughout the cities. Plants are obviously closed, but we are still using the cold patch and taking care of any odds and ends that are left over. Yard waste pickup is shut down for the year. Next will be Christmas trees. We did plow for the first time this year, in the last month. Everything went well. Moving on to capital activities, again, the base water line that's shut down for the year, New York Road. The water line is complete, so that section is done, and Margaret Street is still in the possibilities. The miscellaneous items, obviously we have the heat pumps. That project got finished very well. I think it's performing well. We'll find out when we get the below zero temperatures. And then the last one is the explanation of the capital plan. We had some questions at the last council meeting from one of the councilors concerning funding streams. I don't know if the mayor wants to wait until the meeting or want to go down.
I just added a memo in there. I think there's a couple more pieces to add to that project, just addressing some of the questions on the other projects that are in there. Forgot which ones they were. I know you had a couple projects in there. And then I think, the farmers market building, I just talked to Matt Miller regarding that. And I'll update that memo, but I did add the initial draft of a memo in there regarding capital project funding. If you want to talk about some of the more bigger ticket items, specifically Margaret Street and chips. That was part of the question about the use of chips and that kind of funding, chip style funding that we received from the state. If you want
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've gone through this a couple of times. I don't want to sound redundant, and I know some of the councilors are crystal clear on this, and some are still confused. When we say CHIPS funding, or when we use that because it's an easy term, it's not just CHIPS. When we say CHIPS in the budget, it's CHIPS. It's EWR, which is extreme winter weather recovery funds, paved New York funds, and then the newest one. Or newest two actually is the touring routes and the POP money. Now, historically, the city gets about $600,000 a year 20 routes gave us an extra 2,036,000. And POP, which we're thinking of a one-time deal, gives about 80,000. So that is when we refer to in the capital plan or at any meeting on chips. Because all those funds can be used in a similar manner towards road reconstruction, or, you know, whether it be sidewalks, sub-base curbs, all those type of things, asphalt surface, asphalt overlays, it's all the same. There is one nuance, the actual chip money itself of that can be used for capital equipment. And that's what we've been doing, that's when we have a discussion about the wheel loaders, for instance, or any trucks we buy. Something we never did in the past in the city, to my, that I know of, was utilizing CHIPS money to buy equipment. Over the past probably 4 or 5 years, we made an effort to buy using CHIPS money, so we're not borrowing or, you know, spending the general fund money. And it's been really successful, so.
And like, typically the CHIPS money, just the CHIPS money itself is what we're usually right around 400,000.
400, yes, sir.
Yep.
And then the other two were, I think, DWR is 60, I want to say, Hagen, or I don't know, the letter in front of me is 80. And then obviously, potholes, the Taylor pothole is what, 80, yeah. Yeah, it is, Taylor pothole. And,
The touring routes funding was reapproved, reallocated this budget cycle as well. So that's something that we've been advocating for the state through NICOM. And then also the whole chip style funding for water sewer infrastructure replacements, as council will probably knows that a lot of the time when we go for water infrastructure improvements, we have to do a WIA program, or we have to apply for a grant program, rather than doing chip style funding for similar to what our roadways are, where we're allocated a number of funds based on the roads that we maintain, a percentage of whatever, however many miles we have, we're allocated funding for that percentage of miles. So we've been advocating for the state to treat our water sewer infrastructure the same way we treat our road infrastructure in terms of funding. It hasn't been quite successful yet, but we're still pressing.
In the touring routes, that's year to year at this point.
it is year to year.
I know it came up during COVID.
Yeah, I think our first allocation was last year.
No, yes, last year, and then we got approved it this year, and.
So I believe we're also gonna get it again next
Yeah,
year.
it's on the table, whatever, but, you know.
We've got two slugs.
We have 2 plugs there so far, correct, so, you know, that's $4 million. And that's fantastic. To give you an example, I believe the county gets around 2 million plus, and so that puts us on par. And while we don't have the mileage they have, we have our roads are in a lot worse shape. And I don't know, why that is. I haven't been here long enough to say why we haven't gone after more of this, but it's, for sure, it helps us a lot.
There were a number of years when the routine maintenance that you guys are doing now every year was deferred. And that's what you probably recognize that when you came in, you were behind.
We were, there also was a backlog when the CHIPS money, and I can honestly tell you, the CHIPS letter would come to the former superintendent and would go to the engineering department. The engineering department handled the grease funds. I guess that's why we never got to record the equipment. That's why we were buying equipment over time, which never was a good thing. And then also road maintenance and how we attacked it. We came up with a different plan when we dissolved the engineering department. You know, about, and again, it's sort of kind of the background I came from, like, well, how will we do it? We've done 46 since we started this program. I think.
So that doesn't include any of the streets that we did this year.
Yeah, so you had probably over 52 streets, so 52 projects, not complete streets, but 52 paving projects. And that's over 5 years.
You know how many miles set?
I don't, we can easily, put that together, that's not a big one, some sections are small. You know, one project I'm especially proud of is the Willow Street Rail Crossing, while it's not a very large project, it's a very difficult project, and coordination of it with Canadian Pacific and that crossing alone is huge. It was a real problem area, you gotta take care of. Tonnage wise, it wasn't very big. Now, flip side of that, we did all the way up to Route 3, up to the from the town line, all the way down to the Wylie Broad Street. So that job there was a high tonnage job, and it went off really well, as many work, but, all in all, the project's been a success. You probably noticed this year, when we did these jobs, I was really good with my estimates the first couple of years, but with the economy the way it is and the escalation of fuel and everything else, my estimates aren't as good as they used to be, even though normally I'd say, okay, we're gonna do 4 streets in this area, and I put an extra one in. We've been lucky to get the streets done, we can with what we budget, trying to stay tight. So it's just the nature of the way the world is right now.
And to your comment, you know, we do try to put out a paving schedule every single year. And we've been pretty consistent with that, obviously, as Mike mentioned with the LCD project, and we got sidetracked a bit. We were still able to do some of that work, but, you know, when we come back.
We actually did we did the whole.
Yeah, or the hill, right, so we.
We did the hill, plus we did those streets on the base. We're done.
And typically in the normal year, if, you know, once we identify a number of streets that we're gonna pave, Hartwell, St. John, LeBlanc, we typically would have a bit more capacity to follow up with additional streets. That extra capacity was just consumed by the project that we had.
We did, and again, we did it a couple, we did Sheridan, Mildred, when we were up on the hill. But the ones on the base, we were kind of touch and go there on the back end. I didn't know if we would be able to do the actual overlay, or big overlays in a couple of them. But again, with the mayor said, we probably would have taken that a step farther if we didn't have the fight.
And certainly talking about the capital program itself, it's also, and we'll rehash this on Thursday. We can talk about this in a bit more depth if there are more questions, but you all know that even though the program itself is passed in the budget, it's not automatically approved as spending measures. We have to go project by project, reprioritize a lot of these things. Obviously, we would have probably tackled a lot more on the capital project this year had it not been for Lake Country Village. But these projects come before the council for approval before any monies can be spent on them. Anyway, so even though it's in the budget, it's not automatically expended as part of it.
There will be, obviously, the road resurfacing is a pretty easy estimate. The ones that we're gonna have to pay close attention to in this calendar year will be Margaret Street, there will be decisions that have to be made. Whether we're gonna take certain alternates, you know, the overall scope, we're trying to put the project out to bid in such a manner where if we cannot afford the whole thing, we can afford part of it. Definitely needs to be done, utility wise, we should, we did 4.6 miles of pipe this year, we should be doing 4.6 miles of pipe every year, although we can't afford it. So
That would be good.
if we could, we should, but that's just not gonna happen.
And the notion now is the materials that we're using really will hold up for generations ideally to come, well beyond the materials that we're currently using, technology that these pipes have made from now. Thawing, freezing, frost, being placed on rocks, which is obviously not ideal, but that's what we find a lot of the times when we face with these water main breaks.
As far as the memo there sent out, we gave you a total number of, and the total number is what we currently have to build against, which is $4,374,000 change. The next line would be committed funds. So we got together with Chamber of Mars, and we do have work or funds already committed to prior capital project. And those could be anything from a street. For instance, we have 300 base, which we're still waiting to bill for. We're just waiting to find paperwork. and also getting it in cycle and capital equipment purchases. So we want to make sure that it's clear that we have, of that, we have 1.645 to committed, that gives us 2.7. Come April, we'll get a minimum of probably about another $600,000. Now, if we get the 2 million for 20 out, that is even better shape. But again, we don't know exactly, but historically, that's what we pick at. It's a minimum of 6. And like I said, last year they gave us another 2 million plus the 80,000 for potholes. Any questions on any of the?
Yeah, I have one question, it's not specifically for me, but
Okay.
people over in Lake Country Village have been asking, like, I know some of the streets are like half paved, sort of, and they want to know, or wanted me to ask the question, is that going to be paved in the spring? We're going to go back there and do the
So
repaving?
in the capital projects, in the capital plan, we have those streets that are only trench paved, we have that in there to mill and surface. There will be a lot of settling and running due to the amount of fill we had to put back in. Even, there was not a lot of compaction that went involved in that, because we had to be very careful working next to the old pipe, we didn't want to blow it up. So there will be a certain amount of increased thaw. We'll go through the cycle, we'll see how the streets look. You might do all the streets, you might do some of the streets, depending on how they go through the season and what they look like. But yes, right now in the plan, Massachusetts, Maryland, Dakota, Maine are all scheduled.
They were asking too about the sidewalks, are those?
Sidewalks will be replaced, and that will be under the emergency project, where we put some temporaries in. Any curb that we took out will be done. Any lawn areas that we further restored will be further restored and hydro seeded. So we do have a plan. We're actually I'll take the time to quantify what's left on each street. So when we go to attack in the spring of the year,
And these conversations have been had with the HOA board as well as the president. We have talked to them several times about what the plan is, so these people can also talk to the HOA. I believe the HOA also sends out emails to all of their members, and they have a website too that they update regularly on the progress being made out there. So all that information is put out by the HOA.
Is that a lot of does that involve a lot of property that the HOA?
I would say probably 80% of what you have, everything west of US Ave is a part of that HOA. So that's-
Oh, really? So that's pretty big.
US Ave.
Really, it's Louisiana and part of Kentucky are the only streets. A little bit on the south end of Main Road. That's the only parts that are privately owned. Everything else is the HOA.
Probably 80%, 80, 90%.
Yeah.
In that neighborhood.
I would say at least 80% is HOA.
Yeah.
But like to reiterate, what you said, they've all been given this information, very, 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 forthcoming with it. And so we're not going to walk away from it. This is a priority of ours, particularly restoring sidewalks, curbs, lawn areas. If we driveways, there's some residential driveways that have blown up. Former council Armstrong, I made a mess of her front yard. It's bad.
We didn't get into our flower beds though.
We didn't get every- Well, we got our driveway back together temporarily, explain the situation directly to her. And as soon as weather permits, we'll be back out there, take care of these people and get them back to
Yeah, unfortunately, it was quite an extensive project, and I know I went out there quite often for the summer, and I tried to picture myself only one of those houses.
Everybody, for the most part, was really, really good out there. We made sure to have open communications with every homeowner as we were doing their service line, letting them know we were doing it. Everybody was really good at understanding. Towards the end, people were starting to get antsy, but rightfully so. We've been there for 3 months.
Well, and same thing, any conversation I had with either members of the board or, I would too drive around and see somebody walking, I'd make it a point to stop and chat with them a little bit to see how things were going. I've heard nothing but positive response about the crews, how the crews interacted with the community out there. And again, you're right, the same thing I heard was, wears on me after a while, you're driving on gravel for 4 or 5 months and. It's like, oh, come on, when we're gonna end, and we did wrap it up, but again, we heard nothing but positive things from the folks.
From, start of putting pipe in the ground, we start turning off the asbestos main, it was 71 days. And that's about as fast as I got off. I mean, that was 5 pipe crews plus. And then you do like behind it restoration, you probably had another 20, 30 days, maybe
6.5 miles away.
with the service line.
What was the remedy for the existing infrastructure? Leave in place?
Leave in place is full,
And
Well,
yeah, so it's all pressure grounded with global fill, everything again, the pipe. West of us have it all complete, so New York Road base contract is done. The change order to that New York Road contract is done, and it is all complete and under the budget number. And then currently we're trending, we'll do the final, I'll find out how much we've spent, I have a good idea where we're at, the purchase order, we're below all the purchase orders that we've written so far. And then we'll tally it up, I know Richard and I sort of can try to get things tightened up a little bit, so we can give you a better answer, because you're gonna be asking, are we gonna spend 10 million, or are we gonna spend 7 million? We spend 7 million, 6. Opening around 6, 6.5, if everything goes as planned, restoration would be the big thing in the back end. But like I said, we'll quantify what we have left. We'll make sure we close out any purchase orders that are open, because Chamber of Mars wants to, the ones that aren't going to be coming back next season, there are certain contracts that we closed out. We'll get them to bed, and then we can talk about what's left and what we're thinking it's going to cost us.
Again, just curious, like the paving section of that, and how is that going to be charged? Back charged in water fund, or is that can we use some of
So,
those paving funds? for
The
that?
trench paving is charged for water. So the knee line stuff, anything that's full width. So if we did for instance, Kansas, we put the water line down the road. And we paved in binder during the trench section. Then we overlaid the whole street. The overlay was charged to chip fund. But any sort of pipe work where we paved this a trench was charged to.
Big on plan project. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions you might raise?
Really excited to hear about this, Cornelia Street rehab.
Yeah, and Andrew's gonna give me the update on that one, that's been kind of, under the radar, and he'll explain why.
All right, so Cornelia Street. So last year, we had discussions with the mayor about looking at redoing rehabilitation of Cornelia Street. The council approved for us to hire an engineer to do a base map and a traffic analysis. While that was happening, we were on the side in talks with DOT for getting funding for a complete rehabilitation project of Upper Cornelia Street. DOT came through with $585,000 for preliminary design for Cornelia Street. So it's going to be an 80-20 match grant. So they're providing us with it's $464,000, and the city would have to pay $116,000 for the preliminary design. Now I've also been in further talks with DOT, and they're actually looking at seeing if this project is going to qualify for a federal Marcia Shelley grant. What that would do is that would take our 20%, and that will bring that down dramatically. So basically, the preliminary design cost, it would be $116 on our end, could be reduced up to probably around $30,000. So you're looking at $80,000 reduction on our cost just for the preliminary design. So what is before you tonight is an engineering contract agreement to hire Barton and Rejudas to do the preliminary design. I said the preliminary design work. This contract actually includes preliminary, final, and any right-of-way acquisition and mapping to be completed for this entire project. So when you look at the initial number of this contract, which is $873,000, $968. That's quite a bit more than the funding that we have from DOT for the preliminary design. So it's
Point of correction, $873,968.
yes, I'm right. So the reason for that is because the contract with Barton and Judas is for the entire scope of the project. Now, speaking with DOT, they have over $1 million allocated for preliminary and final design for this. So this project, that $873,000 will be more than covered with the funding from DOT. They also have an additional $233,000 allocated for right-of-way mapping and acquisition. So we're looking at over $1.2 million that DOT has already allocated for this project. And our estimate is our proposal is $873,000 for the whole package deal.
Andrew, how do we plan to fund the actual, this sun's all study?
Correct. So that is also something that DOT is going to be giving us funding for. So that will also be probably an 80-20 match grant. And then again, if this qualifies for Marsh Shelley, to bring that down further. So, and then at that point, you're looking, this project is probably going to happen in 2025, 2026 timeframe. So, March Street being completed at that time, and we still continue to get Corning Roots funding, our CHIPS funding, any of that funding can be allocated for our costs of that project as well.
So the plan, as I recall, is to redo the street from Prospect all the way up to City Limit.
Yes, that's correct. So what we're looking to do is basically take the traffic study and the base survey that were provided by Lobella. And we're going to look and see if we can do some kind of a traffic diet or really improve the intersection that we've done the triangle that right there for the Walgreens and Stewart's. There's a lot of accidents in that area, so we're going to try to clean that up and see if we can do something different there. One of the bigger things is the walkability and bikeability. In the wintertime, we're seeing people bike through the snow or walk down the middle of a lane carrying their groceries because there are no sidewalks, there's no bike lanes. So that's really where this project started from, is pedestrian bike safety down the street to the corridors. Any questions?
Yeah, I know one problem with that is that coming off of Broad Street, heading west up onto Route 3, there isn't really enough room like this. When you swing out there, and people come up into the intersection. I try to avoid that. at all
You
times.
really have to swing right, like you're going to Stewart and then swing back. Especially if there's a car parked in front of you.
I think that might be correcting that. I don't.
That is the point.
Across there, taking Walgreens, you turn right, you turn left.
Yep, that is.
That's like the triangle of death.
That's right.
Triangle of death. And try to even walk around there. It's like, you know, like Andrew said, yeah, it's the most, like, part of it is like, some of it is like really heartbreaking, seeing people have to walk in the street with bags of groceries because there is no sidewalk. And you want to talk about getting people between where they live to where they can shop easily, like.
There's a crosswalk right there. You can go from Burger King and you go over to where the gas station used to be. There's no curb cut. And in the wintertime, I've seen a bike cyclist go across that crosswalk and not realize that there was no curb cut and hit that curb and they went for a ride. It is not friendly at all. And it's a very wide, typically you would have some kind of island in the middle there, cross the island and then go from the island. This technically it's a 5-lane road. That or it might even be 6 with your turn lane. the space, the hash house space, so it's a very wide area for pedestrian to make a single cross. Yes,
Definitely something necessary and looking forward to that.
yes, definitely another big problem.
Or, and you just, will help us with these designs.
Yes.
They'll help figure out what is the best solution for the problem here.
Yes, sir, yep.
Thank you very much.
The draft resolution forward.
All right. Yeah, we now move on to draft resolution authorize award of preliminary and final design phase for the Cornelia Street rehabilitation project, which we just discussed. I think motion to move this with regular examination. Motion by Kelly. Second by Mary Rosenquist. Is there any discussion? I guess.
Sorry, we jumped the gun on that, Chair.
That's okay. We got all our information. Anybody have any other questions?
So, the rate here, that's for the whole like thing,
Correct.
okay,
This is a major project, folks.
Yeah.
Like you can imagine what a redesigned Cornelia Street will look like. That addresses pedestrian safety, walkability, bikeability, drivability, access to storefronts, access to shopping.
Yeah, this number for Cornelia Street is almost identical to what it's costing us to design Margaret Street. So it's very.
More expensive.
Oh,
and
and
you pay for it.
in this case, it's a state highway.
Yes.
We're getting all this help.
Correct.
to do it. So
Yep.
that's good.
That's
For both for the design and for the design and engineering team for the construction.
And I wonder if it might not be an opportunity to look at some of the infrastructure under the road.
that.
Is that
That is also something that we had included in this price. We do have some issues that we want to have addressed as part of this project, and those items are included in this price for the design.
do we have repeated problems with our water and sewer up in that area?
Sewer, yes, water, we have some things that kind of scare us. It's one of those issues that we stay up at night worrying about, hasn't caused us any.
like that, the goal.
Yeah, but if it does, we don't, yeah.
The major
Getting rid of all the-
transmission lines to the city of Plattsburgh run down that corridor there, and we need to make sure that while we're there working, if there's any upgrades, updates, now is the time to do it, and get it right.
Yes, the next question is this a full depth reconstruction we're talking about? So
Yes.
you will have an opportunity to dig in and see.
I guess one way to really look at this too, and to know how the extent of it is, we're talking about property acquisition, so we're talking about taking properties. Right now, we're already pushed to the limits, and they're talking about going out wider. How much, again, that will depend on the design of what we do some stuff with, and what and DOT has a big say in this. This is not. The city comes up and we have, this goes from Bartlett Jews to DOT, they're the ones that are gonna dictate to us.
Yeah, DOT is gonna drive the design through this
Design
project.
for the project. That is the difference on this one. But they're very, like Andrew said before, we've had some conversations with them on the telephone that. Pedestrian safety is really the big number one factor in this.
Any further questions?
None.
If not, Councilor Kelly,
Yes.
Councilor Talon. Councilor Moore, yes.
Yes.
Move to the regular agenda, discussion for capital project. I think we touched on that. I don't know if anybody had any additional.
We will, and sorry, Councilmember, we will continue having this conversation on Friday or Thursday. Per the request by Councilor Gibbs and other members of the council to hash out more details on the capital program. And I believe we captured all the questions that were posed to us last regular meeting. Some included in the memo, some will be added to that memo as well in preparation for Thursday.
Does anybody have anything special they wanted to bring up or other than what we're going to discuss on Thursday? Okay, moving on, environmental. Draft resolution authorizing the travel request for environmental manager. Make a motion. And we request, second. Council Keller.
It's an annual conference for the New York Water Environment Association. It's in New York City. And something I usually go to every year. Last year, I think we saw virtual. The session topics include asset management, greenhouse gases and biosolids management, resiliency, energy conservation, emerging contaminants, regulatory issues, combined sewer overflows. Also provides hours towards licensing and meeting for other regulators and municipalities and committees, and it's a really good and informative meeting. So the costs are outlined on that spreadsheet.
You've made presentations there, John.
What's that?
You've made presentations there.
Yeah.
You think to do that this year?
Not this year. I am, if you authorize me to go, I am going to be moderating this one session.
You're gonna be coming back even smarter than before, right?
Hopefully not. Tell you what, I saw everybody. My staff friends when they go, they come back with all these great ideas and just like,
Get a whole bunch of emails while he's done.
That's
probably the most,
conferences. You do go and get a lot of interesting and innovative.
just the ability to interact with regulators and funding agents and all that stuff. That's where the relationships are priceless.
Okay, any discussion on this? If not, we can proceed to move this to the regular agenda. Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Down,
Yes.
Councilor Moore, and yes,
Yes.
okay. Okay, that draft resolution 3.2, authorized drinking water infrastructure improvements project, CDM Smith. Phase 2 engineering design, have a motion. Like motion, second.
Second.
This works part of our second RIA grant, phase 2, which is going to be the construction and installation of the second production well. We tap into the well lines for that power supply. It also includes this phase 2. It's not in this specific contract, but part of the asbestos pipe replacement that we're on, we repackaged our phase 2 grant award and kind of get some funding for that. But this is specifically for the second well pipe connections, power, and the generator at the water treatment plants. The funding source is proposed to be capital projects 83-20.79. We are going to need an additional appropriation for that project sometime in the next month or so, because we got several resolutions being funded from that project, and we're gonna break the bank. So Rich asked me to look at a little bit. This will overextend us along with whatever other monies we think will be expending, and then we'll be doing amendment to the capital project with an increased appropriation.
Okay, so this is for the wells, correct? As well,
Second one,
at
correct.
this point.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any discussion on this item? If not, we can proceed to vote. Councilor Kelly,
Yes.
Councilor Talon,
Yes.
Councilor Moore, yes.
Yes.
Rick. Going on, draft resolution 3.3, authorized drinking water infrastructure improvements project. CDM Smith, amendment number 5, construction administration services for phase 1. Council Down. Okay,
So we've already installed one of the first production well. This is going to be, and we're finishing the design of the transmission line, power supply, and the road to it. And this contract is for the construction services that will need during the actual construction of that project.
okay. And where is the money coming from for this? I think we have some grants and grants.
Yeah, it's capital project 8320.79. The funding source for that is anticipated to be the WIA program, 60% grant and 40% state financing.
Now, in recent months, we said, boy, it looks like the water fund is maybe not doing as well as it might be. You reassured us, I believe the mayor reassured us that that one's coming back, it will be reimbursed as a WIA grant at some.
60% of it, yes. The other 40% will be state financing. Right now, we're told it's hardship financing, which is 0% for 30 years. So depending on how all the funding with the asbestos cement pipe and phase 2 goes, we'll be looking at whether or not additional revenue is needed to support that. Right now in the 2023 budget, there is a proposal to increase some revenue with the infrastructure investment charge for the asbestos cement pipe. In case of the event that we don't get that included in the grant financing, but we don't know the answer to that yet, so.
That's for the Lake Country Guild.
Correct.
Project.
Right.
So you could reassure us that that one is forthcoming. I should say. And our water fund will be quite healthy.
It's gonna have, there might need to be an infrastructure investment charge later on, depending how some of this financing shakes out and which projects are included by the state and which aren't. If you're asking me whether or not the present level of revenue is sufficient to support all of this, I don't know the answer to that question right this second.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hey, John, I know I've asked this before, but I can't remember. The answer is, what is the material of the supply line from Mead Dam to the city? I think that was put in the 20s, wasn't it?
Some of it was the new stuff was put in the 60s.
I think that's what this-
Yeah, so it's a combination of cast iron and ductile iron for the most part.
Yeah.
There's different sizes and different ages depending on which section of the pipe you're looking at. Part of the comprehensive WIA program is to install a redundant line all the way from the at least down to some of the critical intersections, so that we have 2 lines to rely on instead of just this one that's at least 60 years old, if not 100 years old.
Okay, thanks. So is there any other questions on 3.3? Okay, if not, proceed to vote. Move this to the agenda. Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Down.
Yes.
Council Moore, yes. Mayor Rosenquist. Yes. Okay, draft resolution 3.4, authorized proposal CDM Smith water filtration plant, filter backwash treatment options.
Motion.
Motion by Rosenquist, second, Council Moore.
As part of the regular operation of the drinking water filtration plant, the filters, every day, some of them need to be backwashed. So we stop the flow through the filters. We have a pump that pumps water back to the filters and basically blows out all the dirt and sediment, other debris that's been physically removed from the water. That backwash right now goes to the surface lagoons, basically a pond, where those solids settle out. And then the water, clear water that's had the solids removed, can then go over a weir and into a sanitary sewer in the town. Staying goes over Hammond Lane to Ruger and down Ruger and eventually makes its way to the water resource recovery facility.
That
That,
way we reuse that water.
what's that?
I think we reuse that water.
In theory, we could,
Pump it back, like pump the surface of it back through the system.
that's something we could look at. Right now, the plan is to take a look at whether or not we can convert one of the clear wells to, old clear wells to a new one. And get a discharge permit, take that water out of the sanitary sewer. Eventually, some of that's gonna be so dirty that it's gonna have to go.
Yeah, I mean, like, once it settles out, but interesting that with combined sewer overflow constraints, getting some of that liquid out of the sanitary sewer may be beneficial to
That's,
the system itself.
yes, exactly. It's one of the offset projects we're proposing to the DEC about supporting upstream development. We would take this backwash out of that sanitary sewer.
Right. How many gallons are we talking?
So it's about 144,000 gallons a day.
144,000. Okay.
Yeah, it is. And
We're drinking that much.
so,
Yeah, it's bad they wouldn't let us just put that in the storm sewer because it's not really contaminated.
well, it does have a lot of solids, but it used to go into, just get discharged, used to go into the lagoon and then basically the surface drainage storm sewer. And then the state didn't want to see that, and there wasn't a discharge permit for that, so that's probably 15 or 20 years ago. It was decided to take that discharge from the lagoon, put it in the sanitary sewer, go to a treatment plant and get treated. Now the lagoon is actually too small for the way the plant's presently operates, and we've got this combined sewer overflow issue that the mayor's been talking about. So we want to get that flow back out of the sanitary sewer. So what we're thinking is we can use one of the old tanks that's not being used, turn it into a lagoon that can remove these solids and then have the necessary permit to just discharge it to surface water and let it go to the river.
Okay, are there any questions, further questions on this? If not, we'll proceed to vote. Move this to the regular agenda. Council Calhoun,
Yeah.
Council Talon,
Yes.
Council Moore, yes. Captain Harris, Rosenblatt. Okay, it's carried. All right. 3.6. Authorize change order 1 to Stantec Consulting Services for updated. Okay, authorize CDM Smith water filtration plant operation and assessment. I think we just did that. Yep, okay. I'll make a motion to approve that. Second, Rosenblatt. All right.
So this is similar but different. We're looking to get some technical services for two things. The future phases of the WIA funding are going to be more focused on the treatment plant. We need a good baseline analysis of the existing ability of the different treatment processes to do their job, how efficient they are, how they're supposed to be operated. We also run into situations from time to time like this recent salty water situation that we had, where we need to pull in a lot higher level of technical expertise. It's difficult to do that in a timely fashion if you're just pulling somebody in off the street who really doesn't understand how the treatment plant's supposed to work. So we're trying to kill two birds with one stone here, do the preparation for grant application, and also have some consultants who really understand the ins and outs of how the plant works, so that if we run into a problem that we're struggling with, and which really above our technical abilities, we've got somebody that we can rely on to help, but they don't have to relearn the plant or reinvent the wheel from scratch every single time. So this is to provide those services, basically to take a look at raw water, different unit processes within the treatment plans and how the control systems work. And create a baseline analysis for what's being done out there. It'd also be the building block for some future tasks, which are included in this proposal, but I'm not recommending that we act on it this time, which would be the development of up-to-date standard operating procedures. And being able to take a look at some of the monthly operations data in real time, so that they can provide support to their community.
Thanks, John. I think this is a good idea. Any further questions for John? If not, proceed to vote. Council Kelly,
Yeah.
Council Talon.
Yes.
Council Moore, yes. Mayor,
Yes.
Resolution moved to the regular agenda. We have one more, 3.6. Draft resolution authorized change order 1 to Stantec Consulting Services for updating for air state facilities improvement.
Motion.
Second by Council Kelly. Any questions on this? Proceed to vote. Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Talon,
Yes.
Council Moore, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Did they have any new business? Did they put the committee this week? One?
Just to let folks know, this is our last meeting, the last infrastructure committee meeting of the year. We've got one more regular meeting this year as well, in 2 weeks' time. If there's any other items for infrastructure to come before, the regular meeting that will come after this, I'll make sure to let you all know. If we do have something that does need to go on, I'll try to get it on one of the final meetings, throughout the year. We have one on the 8th, and then one on the 10th. The city ops meeting on next Monday. So if anything comes required for infrastructure, I'll make sure that it comes on one of those meetings and let Chairman Moore know that it's going to be proceeded that way. So, okay. Thank you for your work this year, this committee. Obviously, the amount of work and effort that this committee alone produced, it's been significant for the city of Plattsburgh. So, Council Moore, I appreciate your leadership, your insight, your expertise in this type of work. Thank you guys as well for showing up and helping facilitate this conversation and all the work that you've done for the city. Appreciate it.
Here's the guys that do it. Get the work done.
For the guys who bought the other guys around. Right on. Thanks all.
Strategy, we all.
Yeah, strategy. Yeah.
The teacher. Smarter. We all feel smarter after listening to these guys. Give us all the details of what they're doing.
It's been a great year for that. For that.
And one other thing. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
One other thing that I don't want this to be diminished, and I think that this really, and I talked to Mike and Andrew about this. The sheer fact that the city of Plattsburgh, through our Department of Public Works, installed 6 miles of new water infrastructure in 70-something days is white paper material. And I don't say that lightly. I really do think that is something that could be and should be highlighted at the national level for municipal operations and municipal government. So that's something that really should be acknowledged, that the work that you guys did at that, an emergency, but still that it got pulled together, the way that it got pulled together and went as smoothly as it did. Commendable. Appreciate that.
I do have one additional piece of business, and that is, in spite of monumental water work that you did this year, you also did a number of street resurfacing, and many of them in my ward. My ward's looking pretty good, by the way. So I appreciate that. It's my last year as a counselor coming up next year, and I'm leaving the ward in good shape as far as roads go. So thank you so much for that. And there's a gentleman who lives on St. John Street who calls me all the time. And he wanted me to be sure to tell you guys how happy he is with his street, now that the street and the sidewalk have been redone. He thinks it's great. And he said the workers for Public Works are so very polite. That was the thing that he noticed most. That they're always there to answer questions. A late summer, so really, really a good experience for the people who live on that street. So thank you so much for that.
Or the rest of us are in, right?
We like that.
It's a farewell tour.
Okay.
Now you got the good street next year.
No more new business, and I don't see anyone here for public comment, so we'll take a motion to adjourn. Rosenquist, all second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, folks.